The day Darnell called, a bitter chill snaked through the phone line, though the Atlanta summer air hung heavy and thick outside. My baby girl, Zola, was barely 2 years old, her tiny hands sticky with peach juice, her laughter echoing like wind chimes in our small but warm apartment. My name is Aisha, and I'm a 32-year-old single mother. I work as a gifted middle school history teacher in a predominantly black neighborhood, and I truly find my passion in shaping young minds every day. My life is a meticulously balanced act of budgeting and unwavering devotion to my family. That devotion is fueled by the memory of a childhood spent watching my own mother struggle to demand respect. Because of that experience, I carry myself with a resilient dignity and remain fiercely protective of my small family unit. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Darnell's voice, though, was stripped bare of all warmth, all humanity. It was the clipped, sterile tone of a corporate lawyer delivering bad news, not a man speaking to the mother of his child. He wanted to talk about future arrangements, he'd said. My heart had already begun its frantic drumbeat against my ribs, a warning I'd learned to heed. He didn't mince words. He wanted to sever his parental ties, not because of some fiery disagreement, not due to distance, but with a cold, calculated indifference that stole my breath. He just didn't want the financial obligation anymore. That was it. No sentiment, no sorrow, just a bottom-line decision that slashed through the last fragile threads of what we once were. It confirmed every whispered fear, every late-night doubt I'd ever wrestled with since he first walked away. He wasn't just leaving. He was erasing. And in that moment, the vision of my daughter's future, untainted and whole, became my singular, fierce obsession. I should have let the rage consume me right then, let the bitter taste of betrayal harden my spirit. He was sitting in some high-rise office downtown, deciding to discard his own flesh and blood like a worn-out receipt, while I was left clutching a phone, trying to shield my little girl from an invisible, devastating blow. The betrayal cut deeper than anything I'd felt when he first left me standing alone, pregnant, scared, and foolishly optimistic that he'd eventually step up. But this was premeditated cruelty, a final, definitive erasure of Zola's very existence in his life. The initial urge for revenge was a searing heat in my chest. I could fight him, drag him through court, demand every dime, and expose him to his family, to the world. Yet, as I watched Zola try to shove a huge toy block into her small mouth, her brow furrowed in concentration. The heat subsided, replaced by a cold, clear resolve. My fight wasn't against him. It was for her peace. Every confrontation, every court date, every moment of legal tension would be a tiny crack in the foundation of her security. I imagined years of him cycling in and out, the revolving door of a mediocre father, offering false love and hope only to snatch it away. That emotional damage would be far worse than any immediate pain. So, when the lawyer called back, I made the choice that felt like tearing out a piece of my own soul. I agreed. Not for him, but because I believed his absolute absence was the only way to guarantee Zola's absolute peace. I chose sacrifice over satisfaction. Darnell's lawyer, a slick-talking man named Mr. Harrington, proposed a final meet-up for closure. I scoffed. Closure was a luxury we couldn't afford. It was a neat ribbon on a box of sorrow. Still, I thought of Zola. She was 4 now, bright as a newly minted penny, and she asked those quiet, piercing questions that only children dare to ask. "Mama, why is there no picture of my daddy?" The few times Darnell had contacted me since that initial call, it was with some melodramatic lie, a false deathbed plea, a fabricated desire to amend his wrongs. The last one was the most manipulative, a tearful claim of a terminal illness, begging to see her one last time. I saw it for the dart trick it was, but the word closure kept echoing in my mind. I hesitated for days. My gut screamed betrayal for even considering it. warning me he'd only use her to feed his narcissistic supply before vanishing again. But I believed that a single, clear goodbye, a chance for her young memory to register the man and his final choice, might inoculate her against a lifetime of what-ifs. I needed her to see him, really see him, so she would never idealize the phantom. This wasn't about punishing him. This was about protecting her future from an endless loop of disappointment. Finally, I texted back, the words feeling heavy and definitive on my screen. Yes, one meeting. No more. The tension in my life, built on 7 years of silent avoidance, was about to snap, ushering in a final moment of suspense. We met at a community fair, a vibrant gathering in the park near our church, a place of safety and joy, where the aroma of grilled corn and sweet tea hung in the air. I deliberately chose a public, bustling space to strip the moment of any false intimacy. Darnell arrived looking, well, successful. He wore an expensive-looking linen suit, his watch glinting. He'd put on some weight, the soft weight of a man whose life was comfortable and unburdened. He requested 2 hours with her. The time frame felt like a transaction, a business appointment scheduled between his golf game and his next meeting. He stayed for exactly 20 minutes. The encounter was a masterclass in awkward disinterest. Zola, sensing the charged atmosphere, remained quiet, her small hand glued to mine. Darnell tried to force a smile, a brittle mask of a father. He asked a few perfunctory questions about school, offered an overly stiff hug that lasted a half-second too long, and insisted on taking one quick, impersonal photo with his phone. A souvenir, perhaps, of the life he was officially discarding. I watched, a knot of pure suspense coiling in my stomach, waiting for the devastating moment when Zola would realize this man was a stranger, not a parent. Then, with a curt nod to me, he just walked away, melting into the crowd. That was it. No emotional farewell, no promises, just a casual dismissal. The silence he left behind felt deafening, a vacuum where a father should have been, leaving behind only the lingering scent of betrayal. The immediate aftermath was quiet, eerily so. Zola didn't cry or throw a fit. She just looked up at me, her eyes wide and confused, and asked, "Mama, is he busy?" I swallowed the sharp lump of bitterness that rose in my throat, forcing my voice to be calm and steady. "He is," I said, pulling her close, letting the scent of her hair ground me. "He's very busy, living his life." It was a brutal truth, softened just enough for a 4-year-old ear. I resolved then and there that his 20-minute exit was the final door closing. We never heard from him again, and I made sure our life was so full, so rich with love and security, that the void he left would be too small to matter. We built our own world. Birthdays came and went, marked by Auntie Clara's legendary sweet potato pies, and loud family gatherings where Zola was the undisputed queen. Life was good, but the ghosts of absence are persistent. As she grew, the questions became more complex, arising in the intimate, quiet safety of bedtime. They were always prefaced with a small, hesitant voice and followed by a deep intake of breath. Why doesn't he? Why doesn't he send cards? Why doesn't he call me? Why doesn't he want to see me? Each question was a needle prick, a reminder of the sacrifice I'd made for her stability. I always tucked her in tighter, holding her against my chest until the weight of his absence was momentarily eclipsed by the fierce warmth of my presence. The curiosity in her eyes never quite faded. 7 years passed, 7 years of meticulously guarding her heart, of reinforcing the walls around our peaceful little bubble. Zola was 11 now, growing into a beautiful young woman with my eyes and a vibrant, unstoppable spirit. The questions had thankfully faded, replaced by teenage concerns about school projects and basketball tryouts. I truly believed we had won. We had escaped the cycle of hurt. But life, as it often does, had a wicked sense of irony. It was late summer when the entire structure of our carefully constructed reality shifted. And it wasn't a call or a letter that did it. It was a casual, thoughtless remark from a stranger. We were at a fundraiser for the community center, a big, formal event where I wore the best dress I could afford. I felt proud standing next to Zola. She was polished, poised, and utterly breathtaking. That's when a middle-aged woman, beaming and familiar, walked up to us. She looked at Zola, then back at me, her smile widening into a knowing grin. "Oh my goodness," she exclaimed, loud enough for a small circle of people to hear. "You must be Darnell's daughter. You look just like his wife's youngest boy." The blood drained from my face. My world stopped spinning. The air left the room. The moment was one of pure, shocking suspense, followed by a gut-wrenching realization of betrayal, not by Darnell, but by the universe itself. The peace I had fought for was instantly shattered by a single unthinking comparison. I froze, locked in moment of pure, blinding panic. All the years of carefully constructed narrative, the gentle truths I had filtered for Zola's young heart, felt meaningless now. The stranger, oblivious to the emotional bomb she'd just dropped, continued to chatter, filling the agonizing silence. She spoke about Darnell's new life, his wife, the beautiful house in a more exclusive part of the city, and the children he had chosen to claim. How he had settled down and was finally completely happy. Every word was a razor-sharp shard of glass, cutting into the meticulously healed scars I carried. I forced myself to breathe, the stench of injustice overwhelming me. He wasn't just existing. He was thriving, enjoying the life he had purchased by shedding his responsibilities to Zola. He had found his peace by inflicting pain. My stomach twisted into a painful, impossible knot. All I could feel was a frantic, terrifying concern for Zola, who was standing right there, a silent witness to this public confirmation of her abandonment. I imagined the sheer devastation, the crushing weight of knowing that your own father was capable of profound, steady love and commitment, but simply chose to bestow it upon other children, other families. The knowledge that she was the one deemed disposable fueled a sudden fierce urge for revenge. I was trapped, needing to protect her from the damage that was already unfolding. I somehow managed to stammer out a curt reply, grabbed Zola's hand, and steered her through the crowd toward the exit, my body rigid with suppressed tension. My heart was a frantic, desperate bird beating against the walls of my chest. In my mind, I was already constructing the conversation, preparing for the fallout. I braced myself for the torrent of emotion, the confused tears, the raw question of, why not me? The years of suppressed anger and sorrow finally bursting forth. I prepared for her to demand answers, to feel the deep, crushing weight of knowing that her dad could be a dedicated father to someone else, yet chose to be an absolute stranger to her. I reached the car, unlocked the doors, and gently pushed her inside. I got in, took a deep, shaky breath, and turned to face her, ready to hold her through the emotional storm I knew was coming. My throat was tight with preemptive sorrow, ready to offer comfort and assurance of my enduring love. I was ready for the tears, for the bitter accusations, for the shattering moment of 12 years of unspoken betrayal finally coming to light. I braced myself for a daughter whose world had just cracked open, ready to scoop up the pieces and promise to glue them back together. But when I looked over, instead of the storm, I found a calm I didn't recognize. Instead of tears, Zola was simply smiling. The suspense in my own heart was instantly replaced by shock. Her smile wasn't a mask or a performance. It was soft, genuine, and touched with a quiet sense of something I couldn't immediately identify. It completely dismantled the wall of defensive anger and sorrow I had built up. "Mom," she said softly, her voice barely a whisper against the hum of the air conditioning. "He figured out how to be a dad. That's such a nice thing. I'm happy for his kids. My breath hitched. I squeezed my eyes shut for a second, trying to process the impossible generosity of her statement. Happy? How could she feel happy? This was the ultimate confirmation of his betrayal, a devastating reminder of her own discard. And yet, she was extending grace. The raw simplicity of her perspective hit me with the force of an emotional wrecking ball. I quickly turned my head away, pretending to adjust the rearview mirror, so she wouldn't see the sudden blinding flood of tears that blurred my vision. Those tears were not for her pain. They were for the profound and unexpected beauty of her soul. In that singular, crystal-clear moment, my 11-year-old daughter, whom I had tried so hard to protect from the harsh realities of abandonment, taught me everything I needed to know about the fierce, radical power of forgiveness. The lesson wasn't about Darnell. It was about the freedom she had already claimed for herself, a freedom I hadn't even realized I was still fighting for. Zola's reaction didn't excuse Darnell's profound moral failure. It didn't magically erase the memory of all those bedtime questions, the moments of curiosity that bordered on a deep, aching sadness. Her quiet smile wasn't an act of naive forgetfulness, nor was it a denial of her own emotional truth. What she did, in that fleeting moment, was something far more powerful, a mature act of self-preservation that defied her age. She simply refused to inherit the bitterness that rightfully belonged to him, and perhaps to me. She was rejecting the toxic inheritance of anger and resentment that often shackles a child to an absent parent's story. For years, I had held on to a simmering, protective anger, a silent promise of revenge I would never act upon, but which fueled my fierce devotion to her. I had always believed that my fury was the necessary barrier, the emotional shield keeping her safe. I was waiting for the day she would finally feel the full measure of the injury so I could validate it, fight it, and hold her through it. But her response showed me that my vigil was unnecessary. She had already processed the injury and chosen to set it down. Sometimes we convince ourselves that forgiveness is a grand gesture, a second chance offered to the person who wronged us. We think it's about making things right for the offender. But Zola demonstrated that it's far simpler and far more selfish. It's about choosing not to carry a burden that doesn't serve your own joy. Watching her sit there, bathed in the soft afternoon light, I realized the core of my own lingering tension and sorrow. I was still tethered to Darnell's betrayal, still allowing his choice to dictate my own internal landscape. My determination to ensure Zola's peace had, ironically, trapped me in a state of perpetual emotional warfare. I had been fighting his ghost, demanding justice where none was owed, and seeking retribution where only silence and release were possible. I had conflated her happiness with his punishment. But Zola had already moved past him. She saw a man who was once lost and was now apparently found, but only for others. And she found joy in that simple observation, recognizing his capacity for change without demanding it be directed at her. Her small act of empathy gave me the one thing I couldn't fight for: freedom. It was a radical shift in perspective that cut through the years of accumulated curiosity about his life and the quiet, simmering desire for him to pay. If he had indeed figured out how to be a dad, it was a testament to his own journey, one that had nothing to do with her worth. She was acknowledging his success without linking it to her failure. This was the true closure, a clean, internal break from the cycle of disappointment. My grown-up heartbreak, I realized, was still looking for a grand, dramatic end. Her 11-year-old wisdom simply recognized an opportunity to walk away from the battlefield. The weight of his abandonment was suddenly gone. The drive home was silent, but it wasn't the heavy, pregnant silence of grief. It was a space of quiet revelation. I felt an immense, overwhelming love for my daughter, a love that was not just maternal, but deeply admiring. She had shown more spiritual fortitude in that moment than I had mustered in the last decade. It made me reflect on the first time he called, when she was just 2, babbling happily, unaware her fate was being decided. I remembered the sheer terror I felt when he casually asked to terminate his rights just to dodge child support. That had felt like a moment of absolute betrayal, a theft of not just money but of her future narrative. I had consented, yes, but only with a crushing sense of defeat, believing I was giving in to his selfishness. I thought I was simply cutting our losses. Now, I saw the truth. My choice to remove the door entirely had unintentionally given her the highest gift, the gift of a clean slate. She hadn't known the constant push and pull of a revolving door parent. She hadn't had to endure the whiplash of repeated disappointment. My desperate choice to prioritize her peace had cleared the path for her to develop this incredible, unshakable core of self-worth that wasn't contingent on a man who chose not to love her. The suspense about how she would react was over, replaced by a grateful astonishment. I pulled the car into our driveway, and the familiar sight of our home, with its porch swing and overflowing pots of colorful flowers, felt like a safe harbor after a sudden squall. As we got out, I briefly considered what the neighbor must have been thinking, having overheard the whole exchange. The nosiness of some people had always been a source of quiet tension in our community, but now I simply didn't care. Zola, oblivious to the small-town gossip, was already talking about her geometry homework, her mind completely cleared of the encounter. I thought back to the questions that used to haunt me, the constant curiosity about what kind of father Darnell was now. Did he tuck his other kids in at night? Did he help with homework? Did he tell them he loved them? That burning, corrosive envy had been a subtle form of emotional revenge I inflicted upon myself, holding on to the notion that he must be miserable, secretly paying for his betrayal. But the neighbor's words confirmed he was happy, and Zola's reaction confirmed that his happiness had no power over her. She didn't need him to suffer to feel whole. This was a profound adult realization being offered to me by a child. A hard-earned lesson in letting go of the need for cosmic balance and accepting the reality that some people simply move on, undeserving of the energy we waste on their punishment. Later that evening, as I stood washing the dishes, the final, subtle pieces of the puzzle clicked into place. I remembered the time she was 4, and he'd called with that pathetic, desperate lie about the terminal illness just to see her one last time. The lie had been so transparent, so manipulative, designed to exploit my pity and my residual love for the man he once was. At the time, I wrestled with incredible tension, almost succumbing to the urge to grant him that final, theatrical moment. I thought he was trying to use the suspense of death to manipulate me, but now I saw a different truth. He was trying to use the child to validate his own miserable existence. It was just another selfish act, another demand on our emotional resources. And I had said yes, believing in the power of that 20-minute awkward meeting for closure. Now I realized the closure wasn't for Zola, or even for me. It was for him, so he could feel momentarily absolved before he returned to his chosen life of betrayal and comfort. My daughter's innocence, her simple acceptance of the man he was, served as her own personal, internal shield against his attempts at emotional extortion. She had seen him clearly then, and she saw him clearly now. He was a man who figured out how to be a dad, but only when the circumstances were clean, convenient, and entirely on his own terms. The emotional pull of this entire experience settled into a quiet certainty. I had often been crippled by the question of whether I had done the right thing, allowing him to terminate his rights. Society, sometimes even family, implies that a mother must fight tooth and nail to keep a father involved, regardless of his quality. I had carried the tension of that silent judgment for years, afraid that by choosing peace over paternity, I had somehow failed her. But Zola's grace proved the opposite. I had protected her not just from him, but from the corrosive narrative that his presence was necessary for her wholeness. He had confirmed in that park, and again through that careless stranger, that he was incapable of providing the consistent, steady love she deserved. He was built for the easy life, the picture-perfect suburban family, not the messy, complicated, and sacrificial work of fatherhood. It confirmed my deep-seated knowledge that he was truly not capable of being the parent she deserved. My agreement to the termination, which had felt like a crushing defeat at the time, was truly an act of profound and selfless protection. It was the removal of the revolving door entirely, ensuring she wouldn't spend her adulthood watching a man walk in and out, stealing pieces of her heart each time. My only regret was the years I spent consumed by the need for revenge against him, instead of simply savoring the freedom she had already won. That night, before she went to sleep, I sat on the edge of her bed, no longer focused on simple protection, but on open conversation. I told her the unvarnished truth of the day. Carefully, simply. I told her that the woman was right. Darnell had married and had other children, and that he was, by all appearances, a father to them. I watched her face for any flicker of pain, any sign of the betrayal I felt on her behalf, ready to envelop her in my love, and shield her from the worst of it. But her expression remained clear and untroubled, filled only with a strange, contemplative curiosity. She reached up and touched my face, a gesture that completely reversed our roles. "Mama," she said, a new depth in her voice, "I'm not mad at him. I just wish he'd been that happy man when I was little, but he wasn't." This simple statement held the key. She wasn't holding on to the fantasy of the happy man. She was accepting the reality of the unhappy, absent man who existed during her childhood and finding a neutral kindness for the man he became for others. It was a liberation for her and an unexpected liberation for me. The weight of the secret, the pressure of guarding the emotional truth, finally lifted. There was no need for revenge, no space for tension, just a quiet, powerful acknowledgement of reality. I realized that what Zola did was not merely forgiveness. It was a sophisticated emotional triage. She separated the action, his betrayal and abandonment, from the person's current state, his happiness with his new family, and decided that neither warranted her energy. She didn't excuse him. She didn't minimize the pain he caused us. And she certainly didn't allow him a second chance in her heart. She simply recognized his newfound ability to be a father as a general human good, a thing to be happy for, without demanding that it retrospectively justify her own pain. It was a radical refusal to carry bitterness that was never hers to bear. I had spent my adulthood thinking that true forgiveness meant a dramatic reconciliation, an absolution that had to be offered to the offender. I thought it was about giving him a second chance, about letting him off the hook. But Zola, with her clear-eyed wisdom, showed me that forgiveness is a selfish act. It is an act of self-love and preservation. It's about giving yourself the final definitive chance to be free. Free from the constant tension of waiting for an apology that will never come. Free from the lingering curiosity about his life, and free from the consuming desire for revenge. That sweet, genuine smile in the car was the sound of her emotional shackles falling away. Age 2. That day in the car, my daughter didn't just forgive Darnell. She redeemed me. She showed me that the greatest love I could offer her was the example of my own liberation. I had been so focused on being the protective, strong Black single mother, a narrative often defined by struggle and tension, that I forgot the ultimate goal was peace. I can finally lay down my arms. The emotional war was over, not because Darnell apologized or suffered, but because Zola unilaterally declared victory over her own heart. I finally understood the profound peace of letting go of all the accumulated betrayal and anger. The years of silently seeking revenge through my own unwavering success and her unblemished happiness felt suddenly hollow. The true victory was the freedom to look at Darnell's life, his new family, his easy contentment, and feel nothing at all. That night, I didn't hold her extra tight out of fear or sorrow. I held her out of gratitude, humbled by the fierce, self-possessed woman she was becoming. She taught me that your past is only a burden if you choose to carry it, and that the greatest act of self-love is simply walking away from a story that no longer serves your joy. We were free, and that was the only inheritance that truly mattered. Click on the next story waiting for you on screen, because trust me, the betrayals only get darker from here.